Welcome again to the Ref Show. Big calls in the title race to look at and discuss with Keith Hackett and Brian Deane. And does it matter where a referee is from? Should it matter where a referee is from? That's a big issue too. Welcome Brian, welcome Keith. We know now that in the big game on Sunday, Leicester 2, West Ham 2, involving two of your former clubs, Brian, there were actually a host of controversies and several wrong decisions made. I think that's a matter of record now, Keith. But how could all of this have been avoided?
I think, first of all, on a big game, and Leicester at the top, therefore you need to ensure that you're not going to have weak referees or referees out of form. So you want to pick your best referees. That's the first thing. So appointment is important. And then, from a refereeing perspective, you've got to have clear authority and control, and that is gained through tempo management, knowing when to release the game and allow it to flow, or if it's getting slightly away from you, a little bit fractious, or players are becoming a little bit more difficult, then put your foot on the ball, and that is achieved by slowing things down, insisting where the ball is placed, perhaps having the quiet word with the players to keep the pressure on them from you in terms of your match control.
John Moss was the selection for this game. That's what you're talking about. It goes to the root of the problem, perhaps. What do you think, Brian? Should it have been perhaps a referee of greater stature for this fixture?
Possibly, but I think if you referee in the Premier League anyway, you should be of that standard anyway. But you know, it was a big game, and so you know, usually you see people like Clattenburg, those kind of referees involved. And
are there enough of them to go around though? That's I think what Keith is referring to.
You know, I mean, if we look at John Moss, I mean, John Moss has had the FA Cup final. Yeah. He's an experienced referee, and he has been in form. Yeah. But when you come to the element of authority and presence and body language, these are some of the areas that are inbuilt weaknesses within him as a human being. And therefore, when it comes to the big games, and perhaps, you know, as referees, we all make mistakes. We're all human. It's having that ability to park that error and get on with the game.
What it seemed he couldn't park was the controversial sending off of Jamie Vardy. Is that where it all went wrong, or did the problem start earlier?
I think, first of all, the element of the problems were initially around grappling. I think there's a lot of grappling going off. We know that Huth of Leicester City has a tendency to overuse his arms and pulling and pushing. That was obviously an area where players began to think, well, I'm getting away with this. And then the first yellow for me was 100% wrong. I found it difficult to find whether it was a careless challenge, because in effect, Jamie Vardy's gone to ground, and the player running through trips over him. Really, it's not a foul. However, he decides, for some unknown reason, temperature within himself, I better show that I'm in control. I'll give a yellow card, and of course, it then is a really cheap yellow card that lands him in jail later on.
So Jamie Vardy's had plenty of praise from everybody in this country, and quite rightly so. Yeah. Was that a dive? The second yellow card, Brian, was that a dive?
Yeah, look, I mean, it happened very quickly. But having seen it several times, and yeah, I think you have to give the referee credit here, because the way how Vardy's dived is he's dived into the player hoping to bring him down. And then he's made a case for a penalty. Now, at that point, it's got to be a yellow card, because if he doesn't give a yellow card, then there's going to be people saying it should have been a penalty.
As a player who tried to stay on his feet, and a big fella too, you know, are you disappointed in that?
I think the problem you've got is that the game's changed, and referees are too easy to be victimised when they get a decision like that wrong. I think there is a lot more diving now, as there is grappling, and I think that, you know, these are the two major problems that you've got.
But was this clear cut enough for him to show the yellow card, or could he have simply...
I think it was a yellow card, definitely.
Okay,
on
what
reflection.
do you think, Keith? Could he have spared himself the grief by Was there an element of doubt? Could he be that sure in real time?
I think that if you're a referee and you've got a big game in front of you, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of intelligence to say, look, is that second yellow card going to be followed by the red, which it is if you give it, so therefore, is it absolutely, am I 100% correct? Now, Brian's right. Brian refers to the fact that he's seen it on a number of occasions, as I have. That first view is sufficient to put doubt in my mind that says, look, nothing, play on, run alongside Vardy at some stage and say, look, you're on a yellow, be very, very careful.
Okay, and of course there were inconsistencies over grappling, clear penalties not given, penalties given for softer offences, and of course a very controversial one right at the end, where the referee has been accused of evening things up, which is quite a serious accusation to make, isn't it?
I don't think the player should have made that mistake. Referees are human, as I've said, they make errors, they give what they see. In Jonathan Moss's mind, he said that's a penalty kick.
Yeah.
I, at the time, watching on TV, go, no way, that's a penalty.
Yeah.
And then I see it again, it's no way. If I'd have been sat in front of a television camera or screen connected to the referee, I would have said, it's not a penalty.
Okay.
So for me, it's not a penalty.
That's difficult.
Indeed. Right, let's be clear that it wasn't a disastrous weekend right across the board for referees in the Premier League. Many of them had good games, in fact. Roger East, Mark Halsey rated him pretty highly on RefCam. For the Arsenal 1, Crystal Palace 1 game. Equally, Kevin Friend, Manchester United 1, Aston Villa 0, and Aston Villa relegated as a result of that. But where referees are from has become a major issue over the past week. People talking out about it. Arsene Wenger has. Brian, before we debate this, did you ever look to see where a referee was from? Did it ever matter to you before a game?
Not really. I can't remember who it was, but I saw one of the referees that used to manage me in Marks and Spencer's in Leeds. I thought, what are you doing here? You know, so I never knew. But the one that springs to mind, I suppose, is Jeff Winter, who, when I was at Borough, you know, you can't have him officiating anything in the northeast, really. I don't think. So I think you have to bear it in mind.
But it's not a big issue for you.
Not for me.
Okay, so Kevin Friend lives in the Leicester area. He does support the Foxes, apparently, or one of the teams.
I think if I recall, and remember, I've had the form in front of me, I'm sure that Kevin was a Bristol fan.
Right, so is that his second team?
So I think Leicester's his second team. Look, the old question here is, let's go back.
Well,
if a referee,
sorry, Keith, before we go back,
yeah.
If you've not heard, Kevin Friend was due to referee the Monday night game between Spurs and Stoke, Spurs title rivals to Leicester, because of sort of a compromise. No slurs on his integrity, but because of the way it looked, PGMOL removed him from that game. Sorry, Keith.
Wait, I'm just going to say this. I think they've done the right thing, first of all, because just think if he gets a wrong decision and he starts getting things through his post and everything else like that, you know, I think it's a correct decision.
So it protects the referee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Arsene Wenger sort of said, well, you're saying that you don't trust this referee by implication here. Well, what's your take, Keith?
It's dead simple. I think the PGMOL are to blame for this problem. When I ran the ship, what we did was we knew where every referee lived, the teams that they supported, and we factored that in. So when we look towards perhaps the end of the season, teams relegation, potential promotion, we'd keep those referees away from those teams. And this is what could have been done. They knew where Kevin Friend lives, and all of a sudden, you need to do it. But see, I think that it's been media driven, because no one said anything about Michael Oliver and his appointment as a Newcastle resident, if you like, in that area, to refereeing Norwich. Newcastle and Norwich are in relegation. Or the fact that Anthony Taylor, very terrific referee. I've got a lot of praise for Anthony. I think he's come on a bundle. But, you know, hey, he's Manchester bound. And he's Manchester United refereeing the FA Cup semi-final.
He's a Manchester resident. He's got Manchester United against Everton in the FA Cup semi-final. We don't know whether they've deliberated on changing that. I think.
Well, I think that if, again, you know, in my time, we had the nonsense that existed before the semi-finals were played, they appointed Mike Deane to the FA Cup final. And I said to the FA, look, what happens if Liverpool go through? Oh, we'll reach that at the time. And then that time was that I had to deal with the management of Mike Deane, who they took off the FA Cup final because his Wirral base.
So it's all a bit of a mess, and it's very, very inconsistent. And for the record, I think Anthony Taylor is an Altrincham supporter.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not
so we're
questioning the
no.
integrity. Brian has touched on it. If something goes wrong, do you want someone knocking on your door? Or if you've got kids at school, the kids will go on. Remember that we have had to have, you know, I mean, even people like David Ellery, a competent referee in the past, and David had to have a panic button at the school where he worked because of the threats.
Yeah, so it is a serious, behind it, it's very, very serious. Okay, talking about threats, on the field in the Championship, there appears to be a case of a referee being pushed and then taking no action whatsoever. We'll discuss that in the second part of the Ref Show. Rejoin us for that with Brian and Keith. See you then.